Now let's move on to step 3, creating new fields of play. The idea here is you want to identify big strategic themes or big strategic areas around which to innovate. You don't want to think of individual concepts, individual products or services. And what we suggest here is you look at the business opportunity map, you look at your scenarios and the trends you've identified, which are also in the business opportunity map, and you start to look at what are the emerging themes you see. So is it lighting and healthcare? Is it a combination of emerging markets and medical devices? You could see how these types of fields of play could support many different products or services. You're not getting to the level of, we're going to offer a device that enables remote patient monitoring for rural Chinese. That's a product or a concept. You want to be one step back from that to say rural healthcare and emerging markets.
Got it. So just as an example, in one of the companies that we work with, they were working in food, in soy, and they were crushing soy. And we asked people what did they do as a business, and they said we feed humans. And then they were looking for new areas to grow out of that, and they couldn't see themselves seeing any other opportunity. But when we asked them what kind of ideas do you have, the ideas they came up with is we could provide chicken feed, or we could provide something for dogs, maybe for some cows. Somebody else says maybe we can go into biodiesel. So these are all fragmented ideas which were suggested, and each one is a product idea. But when we group those ideas together, what we were able to identify is what we call a new field of play for them. So one was feeding humans, but now we could go into feeding animals. And in feeding animals, you had about 10 different concepts in there, from feeding chickens, to feeding dogs, to feeding cows, to feeding pigs. And when you put all that becomes a $10 billion to $100 billion opportunity area. The other field of play that they identified as a result of this was not only was it about diesel, but they said, as we feed humans and we feed animals, why don't we go feed machines? And the concept of feeding machines basically said we can go into biodiesel and other things, but they were able to think systematically across from one field of play to another, and they kind of related to what they do. And this is really important, that there is some relationship to the company as to what they're already doing. Otherwise, it's very hard for companies to accept that that's where we need to innovate. And we've got to be making sure we're creating some sort of overlap with the existing business.
So Hitendra just started to hit on a couple ideas which I think are really important, because we often get asked the question, well, why focus on a field of play? Why not move directly to business concepts? And there's a few really important reasons why fields of play are so critical. The first one Hitendra talked about is fields of play provide a bridge between the core business and new business options. The way to think about it is as you're in your sandbox in your business, you want to start with one foot in the sandbox and get one foot out. So there has to be some relationship between the current business and the fields of play you're identifying. The second point is they have to be big. If they're not big, they're not exciting to senior management. So when you think of a field of play, you want to make it bigger than a single concept, so you can say, we believe the market for this is $2 billion or $10 billion. And the third point is you want to diversify your risk. So by picking something that's intentionally big, that can support multiple concepts, if one concept fails, the whole program has not failed. And equally important, you can take the learning from one project and apply it to the learning of another project in that same field of play. So you see companies like Apple and Google do this all the time. The iPod was a complete success. Apple TV was not a success. The iPad so far has been a pretty good success. Now the learning they got from Apple TV about how to cut deals with video partners, that all went into the iPod. You can get video on the iPod, you can get video on the iPad. They learned things from Apple TV, so even though that wasn't a commercial success, it was an internal success to use that learning in other projects.
Okay, so this is a good warning for all of you guys who are going to be in this phase. Many of you already have some business concepts that you think are the right ones for the company. And you're pushing those forward right now because you think you've already solved the company's big issue. What we're asking you is to hold off a little bit on that particular idea that you've fallen in love with. And don't try and build fields of play around that idea. Let the process work itself through. Identify big fields of play. And on those big fields of play, you'll be prioritizing. So you're not going to be doing just one field of play. You're looking at about 4 or 5 fields of play.
Yeah.
And of those, you'll prioritize one of them. And that prioritization will come working closely with your senior leadership. And they will provide some guidance around which field of play is exciting for us. Whether it's attractive, big, whether it's compelling, People in your company and your customers, others will get excited by it. Whether it's actionable, that you as a company can do something with it. And those criteria will allow you to choose one of the fields of play of the 4 or 5 that you've got to develop. The warning here is many people will rush at this stage to come up with a business concept or a product concept. And it may be the right one, but what we find statistically that you can't, if you follow that path, more than likely 9 out of 10 times that particular concept is going to fail. And what we want to try and do is put the portfolio of opportunities, and from there, as Tyler said, we connect them together so the success of one or the failure of another can all be brought together as a learning to make others successful. Field of plays are strategic and they're very valuable, and the choice of that is made by the senior leadership. Versus if you look at any business concept, it may be a decision made at 2 or 3 levels down, and therefore it doesn't have the protection of the organization and the cover from strategy to make sure it goes forward. So please be very careful here not to push your agenda on single business ideas.